I want to talk some poker and some gambling futures with a really talented guy, professional poker player, professional gambler, poker analyst, sports bettor. Tony Dunst joins me on the show. Back on the show, Tony. Thanks for being here, man.
My pleasure, Bill. Always good to be here.
So one of the things I'm really excited about is CBS Sports now has a relationship with the World Series of Poker on CBS All Access. We're streaming a lot of the events leading up to the main event. The main event won't be on CBS All Access, but a lot of others are. And I wanted to ask you, because last year I played the 888 and got absolutely destroyed. If you were looking at the calendar as an amateur player and you wanted to have a go at one of these lower buy-in or mid-level buy-in World Series of Poker events, in terms of stack sizes, in terms of depth, in terms of the amount of play, what's the event you would target if you're somebody like me?
Well, it does depend on your priorities, whether you want to have a lot of chips in the early stages. Then you could target something like the monster stack where you get, hundreds and hundreds of blinds. Or you want something that is going to maximize your comfort at the table and the amount of hands that you get to play, in which case maybe you'd prefer a shootout format or a six max tournament.
I love that. I'm more of a give me as many blinds as possible so I can grind with too much fear. And for you, outside of the main event, are there an event or two that you just look forward to if you're not playing in them, watching that you think is interesting, that you think you can study to maybe get a little bit of an edge, or you're just entertained by some of these World Series events?
Well, I'm definitely entertained by these events, and I enjoy watching the final tables and getting a sense of what my peers in competition are doing. But I always look forward to the six max events because you get to play more hands and because the dynamic is more aggressive. So you find yourself in these difficult situations, or you find yourself putting other people to difficult decisions more often than the like 9 and 10 handed format of most of these no limit freeze outs.
So it's interesting, Tony. I don't play this way, but my brother's a pretty good amateur player, and he's absolutely obsessed with game theory optimization. He's a GTO player, and it utterly has changed the way he approaches the game. As that has become a philosophy that's at play at a lot of tables, how does it impact people like you as you make adjustments when you go into these tournaments, when you go into cash games? How's it impacting just poker in general?
I would say as you increase the quality of your competition, you take more of a game theory optimal approach because you know that they're also thinking about their decisions and thinking about the patterns that they see from you. Whereas in some of these big summer events full of newish players, casual players, you're going to want to take a more what they would call exploitive approach where you adapt your game based on what you see from those players and what you expect in terms of their capabilities within the game of poker and I know how aggressive they are, whether they're willing to make a big call, things like this.
I love it. I'm jonesing just thinking about playing cards. I do want to ask you some sports gambling questions, and we've been talking, Tony, a lot about Kevin Durant, where he's going to go. Caesars has some numbers up. Nets minus 125, Warriors 2-1 that he stays a Warrior, Knicks 5-1, Clippers plus 800. When you look at these odds, do you see any value anywhere? Do you see a bet or two that you like?
Man, after all the conversation about the Knicks, I'm pretty surprised to see the Nets now become the favorite to land Durant. I feel like I'm not up to date on my Durant gossip if these are the odds right now. To be honest, I feel like the value is probably with the Warriors at plus 200. I would think considering the state of his injury, what happened in the finals, the doubt that is always being cast on him, and now this seemingly frayed relationship with the Knicks, it seems pretty probable that Durant stays put to me. But I can't say that with a lot of certainty. I mean, I can remember only a few weeks ago, people were being quoted in all these media sources saying Durant to the Knicks is a done deal. And I remember looking at the price, it was like minus 800 or something stupid. And I thought, well, is that free money? Is it such a done deal that we know from people speaking to Kevin Durant that we should just bet that and take the free money? So this is a tricky one to me.
Yeah, every year this happens. These odds vary, they change, and they get accurate before the decisions are announced. But you're right. There's a lot of. I mean, last year LeBron's number, you could have gotten a pretty good number with the Lakers at a certain point in the weeks leading up to LeBron's decision to go to LA. I'm trying to get into more futures betting, Tony. Want to make some bigger bets down the line if I can find some value. Let's start with the NBA Finals for 2020, and obviously there's a ton of moving parts that have yet to solidify with NBA free agency a few days away. But when you look at the odds that are out there, do you see any good bets for next year's NBA champion?
Yes, and I don't mean to call you out here, but I will point out that the Raptors actually came down a little bit from that, because I've been talking to so many of my friends about, well, I guess we should probably bet the Raptors now before Kawhi makes his decision. We kind of think Kawhi is going to stay. Let's get him now 10-1. And I think it's starting to leak out that Kawhi is leaning towards staying, because I checked those last night, and I think the Raptors have come down to 8-1, which is now making me want to shy away from them. If you could still find 10-1, and that may be available at books out there, I would definitely jump at Raptors 10-1. Outside of that, I don't see anything here that really jumps out at me. Honestly, maybe the Nuggets, if I had to take somebody here. I mean, that was a very capable playoff team that is younger and getting better and has a star playmaker in Jokic. And I kind of feel like, I want to short the Lakers, but that's not something you can do in a sports betting market. So one of the better ways to short the Lakers is to bet on their competition that you think is most benefiting from people overvaluing the Lakers. And to me, that kind of feels like the Nuggets out west, particularly with the state of injuries on the Warriors.
Yeah, and Michael Porter Jr. would have been a top 3 pick when he came out in the draft, was injured. By all accounts, the surgery went well. We'll see at Summer League, but no one's really accounting for what he has a chance to be. I love that bet. I love that team. What about this year's Major League Baseball season as you try to figure out who's going to be a World Series champion? Do you see any value there? Any reason for me to bet on my Cubs, which almost always result in me losing money?
I feel like the price on your Cubs has really come down. And again, the Cubs, along with the Yankees and a couple of other franchises, are always going to be such popular bets. You could find 15-1 on the Cubs. I think you could take it. I was checking the market just before we spoke and saw it a little bit lower than that. So if you find 15-1, that's probably just a good price and jump on it. Everything else here looks pretty much in line with the books that I've been looking at lately. And I found this a very difficult market to take a shot at. The Braves have come down to maybe 10-1. I don't really like them at that price. Red Sox were 18-1 in some spots I like. So this is one of those situations where, on top of them starting the season quite slow and now starting to round into form, their odds might be a little inflated from where they would actually be if they had just won the World Series and then got off to a pretty solid start to begin the season. Then you might see them considerably lower. So if you see the Red Sox between 14-18-1, that's pretty tempting. All these teams with really short odds, I mean, I couldn't tell you who's the better team between the Dodgers, Yankees, and Astros. They all seem so excellent and so capable of winning the World Series. Again, I find this to be a really difficult market to look at. There's nobody there that I really want to jump on, and so I don't want to give you some kind of false confidence in a team.
No, hey, sometimes the best bet is no bet, and I have struggled. I think betting on baseball is really hard. Betting on football, I've had a lot more success. When you look at next year's possible Super Bowl champions, do you see a number or a couple numbers there that jump out to you that you think, again, might have some value?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. If you can find the Chargers at 18-1, I would definitely take that. That is a higher number than what I've seen lately. That was a really good football team that was almost the top seed in the AFC, and perhaps the most fresh memory in people's mind, which is creating some recency bias, is them getting absolutely trounced by the Patriots in that playoff game. So that, again, a fairly young team, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, that feels like it's on the ascent. So that seems like a pretty good opportunity to me. Besides that, I saw the other Los Angeles team, the Rams, at 10.5-1 today, a little higher than the 8-1 we're seeing there. That seemed pretty interesting to me. They're essentially running it back with the same squad that got them into the Super Bowl, more or less. Outside of that, I would not really want to be betting too many teams to come out of the NFC. It seems extremely tough now. But yeah, Rams, if you can find them in the 10-11-1 range, seem pretty good to me.
Tony Dunst, man, great stuff. I'm actually going to do a couple of those bets. I think I'm going to put some money down on the Chargers. You talked me into it. I was leaning that way already. Thanks for being here.
Hey, if you find some 18-1, can you cut me in on that? Seriously.